What's going on, everybody? It's Ron Brown, LMT, the People's Fitness Professional, alongside my co-host,
Mikey Fever.
and this is a New Yorker's Perspective. Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock, as usual. Brother Sharif is on. Dr. Paul Dyer on as usual every Wednesday. Special guest, Dr. George Frazier. Dr. George Frazier. How are you doing, Dr. George Frazier?
I am doing awesome, man.
Well,
It feels something special tonight because we got 5 gangster New Yorkers, right? We got them from Brooklyn, from Harlem. They represent the whole gangsterhood. So it's just good to be back. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. Have been living here for 50 plus years, and just to be amongst the crew is awesome. Thank you for the invitation, Ron.
Thank you.
glad to have you. My pleasure. This is a great night to have you on, plus my brothers. I like seeing these three every Wednesday. You know,
Likewise.
we always have good meetings, always have good builds.
That's a fact.
Today we're talking about fading vows, the decline of marriage and family.
Deep.
And if anyone wants to open up the floor with questions or something to say,
I kind of want to go back to what we have said once before, Ron. Is that it is not that it's fading, is that we are afraid to take an oath. We don't stand by our words. We don't know what an oath is. It kind of goes back when we were talking about our other obligations and other things we were talking about, even with the Moorish signs or the Masonic oath or any oath we take and that we give our lives for. Many of us don't know what an oath is and how to stand by that oath. So I think that's where the disconnector is, or the disassociation is. So we don't know where that plays a part, even in our own consciousness. So I think it goes there quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Deep.
Indeed.
That's one of the mitigating circumstances in all the 2 years of research I've been doing and being married to the same sister for 52 years. And
That's
my
beautiful.
5 closest couple friends, all of us have been married over 50 years.
That's beautiful.
And
Deep.
there's a trip that we take every year to Hilton Head. All of us are golfers. One couple's from Detroit, one is from Atlanta, one is from Dallas, and then my best friend and I, we're from Cleveland. Almost 50 years, every year, we do that trip together. And all of us are over 50 years into our wives.
Hmm.
So
Deep.
let me say that a different way. Or at least this is how I see it from Brooklyn. If you can't build with them, don't chill with them.
Yeah,
Come on now. Come on
Right.
now.
that's
It's
real.
more than just a piece of pussy. Okay. And as we grow older and wiser, we will learn that.
Woo! Hold
Yeah.
on.
At the Francis is now great. Frazier is real. Forgot. That's Bed-Stuy right there.
Right. The most, one of the big things I've written 6 best-selling books on the power of the human connection, the power of effective networking. I wrote a book 35 years ago called Success Runs in Our Race, The Complete Guide to Effective Networking in the Black Community.
Mm.
It's a modern day classic. It is required reading in 57 historically Black colleges. It is the book that started the networking conversation in our culture and ultimately started the networking movement. And in that book, I said that the most important decision you will make in your life will be your life partner, because you simply put your hand on a Bible, because it is a spiritual connection. You put your hand on the Bible and you say something to another human being, you better be serious. Till death do us part.
Mm-hmm.
Till death do us. Now that's a hell of a thing to promise to another human being,
isn't it?
I got married at 28, all right, and I had to make. I wanted to do it one time. My father did it one time, in spite of the fact that my mother was in an insane asylum in Kings County Hospital until she died. But he stayed married to her, and it was death when they parted. He died in the insane asylum, and he died at a home, a brownstone on Putnam Avenue, 779 Putnam Avenue. So that's a huge, huge commitment. The most important decision you will make in your life is your life partner. Now, screw that up 2 or 3 times and see what your life will look like. Right? Mess that up 2 or 3 times. Right? So let's say you find this fine sister, you fall in love, however you define that, you marry, something goes south, and you divorce after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. All assets are split in half. Okay. Now you run in the street, you find another fine sister, right? And you make a decision and fine for 5, 6, 7 years, and you get a divorce again. The half-ass assets that you had, they now split in half again. Do that another time, and you'll be living in the Bowery.
Indeed.
So it's a very, very important economic decision, but a moral decision, a spiritual decision, because you're going to have children.
Of course.
And when you look at and it was and I believe it was Sharif said that something has happened, because what is going on with Black folk in America is not going on any place else in the diaspora. Now, I've been to the continent 31 times. And the state of Black marriage anywhere in the diaspora except for here is just fine. I don't know what it is. It's something in the water, but it is among Negroes in America. Now, by the way, when I say Negroes, let me spell it for you. Capital N-E, capital G-R-O-W. Negro, please. Okay. So I'm writing a book on this called The New Flex, The Existential Crisis of the Black Family, A Path for Restoration. And I'm going to make, because you don't talk about a problem this broad and deep and not have solutions. But one of the suggestions I'm going to make is that we change the vows. Take out from death do us part and put in for as long as we are loved.
Wow.
So, Dr. Frazier, let me throw. So, because so many people are on medication, so many people claim for broken disconnect from trauma, right? They don't feel love. It's not because they aren't loved. They don't feel love. So, isn't there throw a crutch in that someplace?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, you sort of went right to the bottom line, Doc. Black people are out of their minds in America.
Say that again.
Let's just keep it real here. We're from New York. We're out of our freaking, and I would use another word if it wasn't, the public. We are out of our minds. We have no idea who we really are. Exactly. We have gone through a psychological holocaust second to none in the history of humankind. The ultimate programming.
That's a fact.
Now, I know I'm singing to the choir here, but when you look at the 250 to 300 years of programming that we went through, as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing has said, This thinking, this thinking has been passed down.
That's fact.
Exactly.
We actually subconsciously love white people more than we love ourselves.
Amen.
Fact.
I mean, right? I mean, this is just what it is, and we have been messed with, and we don't know who we are. We're awesome and powerful people. We have no clue, and the lies and the history that was stolen, we just have forgotten that we are God's first people. In fact, the mitochondrial DNA of the Black woman is the only DNA on Earth that can produce every color of human being.
Let's go.
The only. So we were building pyramids and solving complex engineering problems when other cultures were living in the Caucasus Mountains, practicing cannibalism. They were eating each other. We were building pyramids and solving complex engineering problems. And you look on those pyramids and you look at those noses and you look at those lips with all they tried to, Napoleon tried to knock them all off. But so we don't have a clue. So yes, we all need help. We need therapy. We really, really do. And it's one of the things when you read the book, it's one of the things that we should be. See, it used to be a stigma. If you went up to another brother or sister and said, well, I'm in therapy right now. So, I mean, people would look at you like you had two heads. Was something wrong with you? Yeah, there's something wrong with me. And I'm trying to fix it, right? Because my behavior is not what it should be. And how I see myself is not the way I need to see myself. That forced me, and I recognized that at a relatively young age, sought out a brother who had a rites of passage program in Cleveland. He was very African-centered. He's in Stool Heath in the village of Atankwa in Ghana. He lived 6 months in Ghana. He lived 6 months here. We sort of grew up together. He's a practicing psychologist, so he's a PhD in psychology and a PhD in law. By the way, he earned both of his PhDs simultaneously. That's how he is. And so he was our family psychologist. So while raising my two sons and trying to kick it with my wife, who was from Cincinnati and I'm from Brooklyn, right? That's a culture shock between the divide there, right? But through this constant family therapy for 25 years that got us on this path. We raised two sons and we raised them right. How do I know we raised them right? They got married and then they had children.
Woo! Yeah, you gotta give it up to him, Ron.
Right? They got married and then they had. So let me just go into a couple of stats and then we can riff on all of this stuff. When I talk about this to large audiences, I always start with this. Without couples, you have no families.
Right.
Without families, you have no community.
Yep.
Without community, you have no tradition. And without tradition, you have no culture.
Right.
It's all connected. It's all
beautiful.
And somehow or another, there's a lot of mitigating circumstances because it's not one thing that brought us to this. It's a confluence of things that have brought us to this. And some of them are cultural phenomena that you will be very familiar with. Some of it is some heavy duty psychological stuff. But here are the raw statistics. This will take less than 5 minutes. The current marriage rate of Black folk, I'm talking about Black male, Black female, heterosexual marriages, is currently at 23%. Down in the 1950s from 77%. We're down to 23%. 71% of our women are not married. 29% of them will never get married. 66% of our brothers are not married. 34% of them will never get married. This has been exacerbated by two other dynamic statistics. 72% of our children are born out of wedlock.
Mm-hmm.
And almost 80% of our children are raised in a single parent household, principally by a Black woman. This is not good. This is not good. Because science and statistics tell us actually that the best result you're going to have with a child, if you had only one parent raising that child, would be the Black male.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, generally speaking, when raising children, it would be important to have the
Okay.
influence of masculinity and femininity working together.
That's a fact.
Yes.
Right?
Agreed.
That's the bottom line. Now, it has also had a huge impact on the intergenerational transfer of wealth, on our ability to build wealth
Mm-hmm.
and to fulfill Proverbs 13:22, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Right?
Mm-hmm.
5 major cultural groups in America. I'll end with this, and we can talk about the other things that have impacted it. There are 5 major cultural groups in America. And for 350 years, when we look at median household income for 350 years, number one of the 5 major cultural groups, white people. 350 years, they were number one. They're not number one anymore. They're number 3. They too are suffering marriage issue in their culture. Now, we know that when white folks catch a cold, Black people catch pneumonia.
Right.
Okay. So they're low, but we're at the bottom. So let me give you the numbers of the 5 major cultural groups, their median household income as of November 2022, and then the marriage rate. East Indians are now number one.
Mm-hmm.
Median household annual income, $124,000 a year. Marriage rate, 94%. Number 2 are Chinese Asians, $109,000 a year. Marriage rate, nearly 70%. Number 3 are white people, $81,000 a year. Marriage rate, 57%, from 90% in the 50s. Hispanics are number 4, $63,000 median household income. Marriage rate nearly 70%. And at the bottom are Black folk, $53,000 a year. Marriage rate 23%. Based on facts and statistics and trends, if I was talking to a bunch of sisters, I would preface it by saying, I want to say the next thing and still be loved.
Mm-hmm.
But based on facts, statistics, and trends, it appears to me that Black women would rather have a baby than to be a wife.
Yep.
Mm.
That's right.
I rest my case. Now, we
You
can
did-
get
you
into
did-
all of the mitigating. How did this happen? When did it begin to happen? What are the things that caused it to happen? There's lots and lots of reasons for it. But those are just reasons. Facts and statistics also now tell us, because with AI, and if you're not using AI, you're crazy. I asked AI to project the marriage rate of Black families from 1950 to 2020, 2030, 40, 50, and 60. Right? So they had accurate numbers right up to 2023. And then the rest was projections. But based on the projections, if we don't fix this or address this in some way and maybe create even a new model for this thing we call marriage, Maybe there's now partnerships, maybe there's cohabitation, maybe there's situationships, but something that smells of family and people working together. Our marriage rate within the next generation or two will be in the very low teens. That's what's happening. So we've got to.
So this goes back to something you and I had talked about when you say.
Thank you, Nicholas Bay. Pardon me. Thank you, Nicholas Bay.
You talked about this had to have been like, oh my God, this had to have been like almost 6-7 years ago when you said the next thing that the black folk is going to go through is economic slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So if you add that trend, which it was projected and it is, to now you add this other we call rail onto the train tracks of that projection, which makes the train a little bit more slicker, which makes sense.
That's right.
This could see why that's diving into that paradigm, right? Yeah. Because you don't have to mention the crime. Oh, that's going to. We're not talking about crime. We're not talking about none of that. We're not even talking about education. We're just talking about these two things. Is why it's really going to go that way.
Another thing is going to happen. It's deep. Because of the toxic relationships at this moment in time between black males and females, just go on social media, look at Instagram, just look at what black folks are talking about in terms of what black women want from black men, what black men want from black women, what they feel black men aren't doing, what we feel that black women aren't doing. I mean, it's just, it's crazy when you look at it. But what's happening is that brothers and some sisters are making a different choice. Right? They are choosing another race. Brothers, no, I can't get what I want in a sister because they're just too hard to handle. So the interracial marriage rate, if you look from 1950 to right now, went from about 0.5% in 1950. Today it is about 12%. And the projections by 2060, 45% of black men will be married to white women. 30% of black women will be married to white men. Now, several years ago, someone asked me, Dr. Frazier, when is racism going to end in America? I said, well, you're not going to like my answer, but here's what I believe. We're going to screw our way out of it. In 50 to 60 years, you won't know who to call a nigga. We will be so mixed up. But it's trending in that direction. Now, the big question is what impact does that have on the culture, the race, our history?
It's diluted.
Of blackness. You see, white people are scared to death because they're not replacing themselves. They're not replacing. They're not having.
They've been afraid.
Children. They're not having enough children to replace themselves, and they will be, in a sense, extinct in 50 years.
And they've been afraid of that since the 50s.
They're not replacing themselves. We ain't got no problem replacing ourselves, but what will happen is we're commingling. So, what will that portend historically for us? What will that mean? What will we look like? Where will our consciousness be? What will that and that phenomenon and how will that impact our connection, bonding with all things in the diaspora. Because remember, this is what's going on in America. This. Now, I'm not saying they're not Africans marrying white women or African women marrying some white men, but it's not in the numbers we're doing. So there's a lot of things to consider.
I have a question.
I'd like to add something considered to that.
Please.
Doctor said some powerful things. One of the things I want to add to the last thing he just mentioned about, yes, I mean, look at the current, look at the current sweeping changes in government that we're seeing now, right? All of it, let's make no mistake, and let's just call it what it is. People can couch it under anti-immigration or immigration, all this other stuff. It's a preemptive attack on what they're calling replacement theory.
That's right.
Straight up and down. That's all it is.
That's right.
That's all it is. Now, that being said, there's also another thing that when we start to look at whiteness is interesting, because it's just like how when we grow, you grow up and you tell a lie when you're a child, but you don't really think it through. And then somebody asks the right question, and now you have to make up 2 more of the lies. Right? Whiteness,
then you got to remember them.
Thank you. Whiteness begs a solid definition. Remember, once upon a time, Irish, German, and Italians weren't white. They became white.
That's
exactly.
And in 2025,
social construct, man, that's exactly right.
Right. And in 2025, right, there's a push by whiteness to accept our Latino brothers and sisters as the new white people.
That's right. Well, I'm glad you said that. Now, before the census put Latino as a category on the census, 80% of Hispanic Latinos check the white box.
That's fact.
Yes, they have. Yep.
That's a fact.
They check they won't be anything other than black.
And more recently, again, it's a dirty game. More recently, and people took it as a victory, or at least a move forward, the new MENA category, right? Middle Eastern North African. If you're paying attention, that's a subcategory under white.
And Latinos don't like to be called Latinos.
Correct.
They're accepting their heritage as being indigenous.
Yeah.
So they don't want to be called Latinos, and everybody should have known that, because they're
Doc, you mean indigenous like the Native Americans?
Well,
yeah,
Taino. Yeah, because
I thought the only indigenous people in America were Native Americans. I didn't know Latinos were indigenous.
Yeah, Latinos comes from Latin word, comes from the Roman word, comes from the ownership of Rome. That's where it all extends from. So, so their wording, meaning they're not a Spaniard, so they're not Spanish. So if they're not a Spaniard,
because Spaniards consider themselves white. They're European,
right? So, but the ones from Mexico and Cuba and they're different. So Puerto Rico, they want to be called indigenous. Now, what's the collective word that they'll use when you call them all together? Oh my goodness. But anyway, they don't want to be called none of those Latinas and
I heard terms of triracial before. I heard that term before.
And
triracial.
I heard that term.
Even to add to that, and I put it in quotes because the brother's correct. A lot of, especially now, rejecting the term Latino, right? What you have, because let's call it what it is. You've got a large segment of them that identify, because what we're really talking about here now is they're choosing cultural sides based on earlier conquest. So either they're choosing the side of the conquered, or they're choosing the side of the conquered.
Conquest. You're right, conqueror. And I think that's where we are too. I think we don't want to be named after the conqueror. So we have our names. We should know our names. We come from a place. We are born of
That's right.
of
That's
people. So
we are African
right.
who happen to live in America, right? We are
Correct.
in America, our roots, right? There is no Negro land. Okay.
Right. There is no Negro land or colored land. Colored land.
It doesn't exist, right? The Irish have Ireland. Everybody has a country that they can connect to their designation.
Right.
We will struggle with
I
that.
would like to chime in. So I want to go back to the subject of marriage. Now, you said that the Africans in the diaspora, the only demographic that has issues the way we have it is just only us. There's no other nation in the diaspora that has issues in marriage like we do. The numbers
No,
the
no,
lowest?
all nations have issues with divorce, marriage.
Yeah.
No question about that. There is no nation in the world that is divorce free or whatever they may call it. Right.
Yeah.
Except we are the ones with the worst numbers. The worst numbers.
Now,
we have the highest. In fact, divorce rate, as you now know, is 3 times higher than our marriage rate.
okay, now I want to ask this. Do you know the numbers of people coming from the diaspora into America and how their marriages work out?
I don't know that number. No, I don't know that number. I could attempt an AI search on it. But
I think I see where you're going, Ron. I think you're saying, when you get into the Western world kind of has like this disease atmosphere that kind of breaks up your mental mindscape into it's poison here.
Right.
And I thought of that too when Dr. Frazier mentioned it, and because if we had a culture that we kind of like put our blinders on, and we can stay focused on generating one country, right, and focusing on one country, we may break up, but we have a focus, right? Here in the Western world, which is we think Western civilization started when Rome fell, which it didn't, but when we think of the Western culture, we think of it goes so all over the place. So we don't focus on one thing. And I think when Dr. Frazier said he's been married to one sister for 52 years, he did mention they stayed focused together. It's not that they didn't have hiccups.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's that they stayed focused. And I think when you always have to keep refocusing yourself, and your partner has to keep refocusing themselves, and then you two get lost and you don't find each other, that's where the disconnect comes from. And that's where the breakup happens, is like, why? It's like we ask each other, how come you're not supporting me? Or and I think that's where Dr. Frazier comes in, says the love part, to be loved. And then that's why I asked the question, is that I'm loving you, but you don't feel it. So I think that's where we become so effed up, is because we are subjecticating ourselves into our own mental slavery, that we become hyper epigenetic into slavery, which we already talked about, which throws us out of love.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where this thing comes all derailed into a crazy.
You know,
It just throws it all off.
Now, I
And
want
hold on, brother. I want to add
Yeah.
one thing. You know, I've been sitting back listening. There's another factor that the doctor said earlier between Dr. Dye and Dr. Frazier is the mental health thing, the stigma.
I was getting ready to go there.
And I have learned that myself. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because listening, I really move. I have taken a therapy course, you know, a few years back, and people look at that as a sign of weakness. I look at it as a sign of strength because you cannot expect your partner to heal all wounds if you haven't done the work yourself.
That's right.
You got to work on yourself. The insecurities, as the words, insecurities within yourself. So you got to like basically break down all ailments within your mind. You get what I'm saying? And to rebuild yourself, turn your strengths, your weaknesses into your strengths, and you learn from your errors. You get what I'm saying? Because it's so easy to point fingers. I always say that it's so easy for us to point fingers, but we got to also look at ourselves. And when he mentioned the community aspect, without community, as he says, there's no communication, there's no family, there's no structure, because the elders were the one that guided newlywed couples, you know, in the courting phase, will give them advice. Nowadays, you don't see that now in this day and age, because you know, you got both sides could be applauding the ignorance, and people are bonding off of trauma, and there's a lot of toxicity involved. And some people feel that if we don't have X amount of fights within our relationship, that means that there's no love there. Me, that's complete BS, because the moment you put jealousy and insecurity, that taints the love. It's destroyed. And they'll, as Dr. Dyer said, there will be hiccups along the way, but we have to stay grounded.
I'd like to add to that.
That's true. That's true, Mike. One quick thing.
Sure.
Both of you and Paul brought up a very, very astute observation, because normally when I'm out and about and people may ask me, you know, how long were you married? How long have you been married? I say, well, I've been married for 32 wonderful years, 50 years total. Because they weren't all wonderful, right? But we stuck with it and we grew together. What I tell young brothers and sisters as an elder, I said, listen, you got about a 20% chance of your marriage lasting. I said, let me explain that to you. I'm assuming that when you get married, you are equally yoked. Now, I have to explain to them what equally yoked really means. It means that the man's strength covers the woman's weaknesses, and the woman's strength covers the man's weaknesses. And you've dated and tested for that. Okay. So you get married and you start here. All right. You start here. Now, wait a minute, I got my fingers wrong. We're on, yeah. Now, the first of two things can happen. Wait a minute. You will grow in one direction, and she could grow in another direction. That could happen. The next two things that could happen is that you will outgrow her, or she will outgrow you. That's four things, four options there. The last option is that you grow together through hell and high water like a twisted ficus tree. And that's what will sustain the marriage over an extended period of time. That's what you're shooting for. You're growing together. This is easy to say, extraordinarily difficult to do, because it really begins with the right choice for your partner. Looking for the right things that you need in a partner. Now, and remember, most of us, we started trying to make these decisions at young ages, and you know, women mature faster than men. So, and the point was made. What I had, you know, there's 11 in my family, born and raised in Bed-Stuy. 11 of us, 8 boys and 3 girls. What we had was a model. And I saw, as I said, my mother ultimately became insane, was institutionalized in Kings County Hospital and died in Kings County Hospital, but he stayed married to her. And at one point, because he couldn't take care of all of us at the same time, because he was a New York City cab driver. We were first orphaned, and we stayed in orphanages for 2 years until then we were in foster care. But my father remained very close to his family, and he would pick us up every Christmas, and we would visit our mother in the insane asylum in Kings County. So remember, I'm a young boy sitting in front of a woman that's talking to the ceilings. And she was paranoid schizophrenia, right? But he held a conversation with her. He respected her. He hugged her. And this imprinted in us, all of us. My sister, she was married 50 plus years until her husband died. We all had these because we had it modeled for us. And but things there are a lot of dynamics that are going on now that make it extremely cultural dynamics that are going on that are affecting and effecting our thinking. In the 60s and 70s, it's really the biggest downward spiral was between 1960 and 1970, when we had about a 10 to 12% drop in marriage rates right during that period. And it's when it was the beginning of feminism. And now there was somewhat of a black feminist move, bell hooks and others, but it was really a white thing. But the whole notion of we are strong, we can do for ourselves, that we can get as educated and as prepared as men. The whole feminist movement changed the whole sort of how women in general saw themselves. Black women had a sort of different perspective on it, but it was fundamentally the same. So feminism coupled with, and I know what my mother was telling my sisters, I had 3 sisters, both the foster parents and the orphanage parents, telling us, our young sisters, don't ever depend on a black man. Don't ever depend on a black man to take care of you. That you must take care of yourself. You must prepare yourself with education, and with hard work to go it alone. Fortunate enough to find the right black man, that's wonderful. Black men are under attack, and we were under attack. Drugs were being put in our neighborhoods, and we had bullseyes on our backs. So our parents saw that and were fearful of the females in the family. And by the way, our sisters listened. Today, black women are the most educated women in America. Certainly out-educated black men. The average household income from a sister versus a brother today is about the same. Both earn about $50,000 a year on average. But there's an educational gap between black women and black men. They have much more education than us. Then we had some other outside influences. And again, I want to say these things and still be loved. And a question about a year ago, someone asked me, what happened to black people? And it's not one thing, but there is a big thing. And we changed when our music changed.
Hello.
But the biggest gap in the divorce rates and the destruction
Mic drop.
was in the last 50 years. Rap music celebrated its 50th year this year or last year.
Last year.
Yeah. Now, it's not all their fault, but when we began calling each other niggas, bitches, and hoes, and Dr. Francis Cress Wellesley made a very powerful statement, and said to the people, she's the preeminent Black psychiatrist back in the day. She said, you cannot continue to call yourselves niggas, bitches, and hoes, objectify Black women, sexualize Black women, and think you will ever amount to anything.
Mm.
Powerful. Powerful.
So now rap music has evolved, but it did some damage along the way, right? And without question. And then from rap music, we got into now in the 2000s, early 2000s, we went to social media. And social media between Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those things that came along. The access to every kind of uncensored media and uncensored conversation, you could pick up 24 hours a day. In fact, there was an interesting statistic that Tom Burrell did, Burrell Advertising. It was 1987 statistic where the Nielsen organization, the Nielsen company, did a major study on television viewing by cultural group in America at that time. It was actually in the early 90s. And it turned out that Black people watched more television than any cultural group in America. We were watching at that time 72 hours of television a week. Black people, 72 hours of television. That's 10 hours of television a day.
Detrimental.
Right? That's right. Now, that is no longer, the new study was done. It's no longer 72 hours of television a week, Black people. It's been cut in half. The other half went.
If everyone's listening to what Dr. Frazier is saying, the people who are watching us, and I know you others are listening, that's programming.
Yep.
Right, Sheree?
What do you call television? What do you call television?
Yeah,
Programming.
Yep,
I mean,
channeling all that.
He is talking about programming, people. He is talking about you guys. We are, as Black folk, are have been programmed, not being programmed. We're not being reprogrammed. We are being programmed for 50 plus years. We have been programmed. And why I think, and I was listening to Dr. Frazier so intently, because how he started and what many of his generation started was people who had a force and a direction to stay together. Since the 40s, the 50s, we didn't have any of those forces to keep us together. And now that the world is going into a turmoil spin, because of how you ever want to call it. You can call it an administration. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it. Now you're going to have to find, if you don't have that partner, and you don't have that partner, and you would like to have your partner to what you call really true ride or die with you, because that's where the time is going to come to cover your six. I'm talking where it comes food, reading material, knowledge, the oath, to carry it forth, to check your signs at the door, to check your allegiances out there in the field, to check who you can really connect with so you can carry forth and where you can go and come, where it's a safety measure. If you don't have those things lined up, you are going to be out.
That's right. Amen.
And that is simple. We've talked about this on the show. We talked about who are your allegiance to? If you don't even have allegiance to yourself and your own mental critical thinking, you are already out. If you can't ask for help, you're already out. And if you don't know how to take an oath to your own personal self, then we can't trust you anyway.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. Amen, Doc. That's exactly right. One of the big flies in our ointment is that we are more deeply committed or habitualized around cognitive bias versus critical thinking.
Oof.
Okay, right?
That's correct.
Cognitive bias, right? Versus
Mhm.
critical thinking. We're all critical thinkers. Because we can look at multiple dimensions. We're well read.
Mhm.
I'm in my office, by the way. I'm not in my office in an office building, not in my home. And you see behind me is 2,500 books. Behind me in my office, okay, it's 15,000 books in my home, right? So I read. I'm an insatiable reader. I have 10 and a half. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying 10.5 million frequent flyer miles. All right. What do you do with the hours that you spend on planes and in airports for 10 million miles? You read.
Read.
You read. And that informs or helps to inform our critical thinking. And you travel helps to inform our critical thinking. And it builds a foundation from which you can draw on. And so this is extraordinary. That's one of the solutions that, and you know the trope of us. You want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book,
Yep.
right? The average American only reads one book a year.
Now they got audibles.
Are you
You
serious?
make a commitment to read just one book a month.
Yeah.
In 5 years, you will have read 60 books. The average American will have only read 5.
That's sad.
And
Whoa.
and so all of this, and what we're all saying, really sort of in our own way, this shit isn't by accident. This is by design.
Deep programming. And I wanted to add rest in peace to, rest in peace. I heard Dr. Neely Fuller passed away.
Really Fuller.
Neely Fuller passed
Oh,
away.
wow.
May rest in peace to him. And honest to, Dr. Frazier, Dr. Dyer, Reef, great educator, my brother Ron. I was reading Amos Wilson book, still reading it. Self-help,
Love him.
self-defeat.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And Naeem Akbar. And this programming has been done, psychologically with the images that we see from slavery, religion, the attack on the psyche, the language, the condition that you're in. So you feel downtrodden. And then you have this destroying where you live at. Because you have that, this belongs to the slave master. So why should I take care of my community? Why should I do anything good? I don't own it anyway, but you destroy it. But you're quick to say I own it when it's time to gangbang and such. You say this is my neighborhood. But to do something positive, you figure out, why should I do something positive so the white man could gain? Like, fool, you live here. You understand? So the future will see that, the children will see that and perpetuate that same behavior. And so it goes back to, we have a lot of ills within our community.
Sure.
Not only here, but abroad to fix, because we know where it comes from. But it's time for us to start thinking.
But when I want to say this, in our generation, I would say, Mikey Fever, like around our age, we were into hip hop a lot, right?
Hell yeah.
And so I think what's imprinted on our mindset are 2 words, nigga and bitch.
Right.
So if I'm calling you a nigga,
Right.
and I'm calling another woman a bitch, I mean, I would say with those 2 words alone,
I devalue you.
That would program us to, just like you said, devalue each other, right? We don't see value in each other. I think a lot of it has to do with the music. And I've been struggling with listening to hip hop, not listening to hip hop, listening to hip hop, and not listening to hip hop. And I'm realizing the power of words.
Yes.
They really change your world.
They do.
And so I'm experimenting right now with cutting some of the music out.
And
Listen to Steel Pulse, Ron.
music has always been an important communication tool to the culture, right? We used it even in slavery to deliver messages and say when the meetings were going to be. We sang it all through. We've invented most of America's music that they listen to and party to. So it's very, very powerful for us. The real trigger with rap was the infectious African beats So not only were we singing it and repeating it, we were dancing to it. It was rhythmic to us. So it was very, very impactful in terms of how we thought and about it. But let me tell you a little piece of humor. I wasn't very happy about it. In fact, my sons and I had the biggest, let's call it fight. It wasn't a fight, but because they were buying it and they were hiding it under their bed. And of course, we would go in their room and they had, we're talking about gangster rap. I just took all their shit in front of them. I broke it up. I said, you just cannot, I said, this is programming. You cannot listen to this kind of programming. This is not who we are. This is not what the culture is about. I put them to rites of passage programs and that kind of, this is not who we are. We're not going to allow it. But anyway, I was having a discussion with a young rapper in Manhattan. And he was a cool guy. And I said, hey man, why are you calling our women bitches and hoes? He said, hey man, we're not calling Black women bitches and hoes. We're calling out bitches and hoes. That's who we're talking to. Not the respectable Black women. So as Malcolm said, if I throw a rock and it hits you, it was meant for you. It was meant for them. This is for the bitches and the hoes in our culture. It is not meant. I said, oh, I get that. But it is having a spillover effect. And we're all feeling some kind of way about that.
That's right.
Now, I understand what you're doing and what you're targeting now. I didn't think of that. But if you want to call out bitches and hoes, there are probably other and less infectious and influential ways to do it. So I thought that was an interesting perspective, but it has had the effect that we're talking about. And that was the biggest divorce period over the rap is now 50 years old. When you look at the from 77% to 23%, the biggest percentage of increase was in that 50-year period. Now, it wasn't the only thing,
right?
But it damn sure contributed to it. And I mentioned to a brother, I said, well, they said, wait, we can't, we create it, man. White people are distributing it. Right?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I hear some artists that say they can't, they won't put the clean stuff out there.
That's right.
The industry who are owned by white distributors and white whatever, they want to hear the degradation and they'll put that out there.
That's exactly right. That's right. They say that you get big contracts if you're writing and singing stuff like gangster. That's when they give you big money because their perception is that's what Black people want to hear. And that's what racist white people want to hear about you, saying that about you. So yeah. But I said to him, yeah, I get that. I understand that. But they would have nothing to sell if you wasn't writing it, singing it, and performing it. They can't write it. They can't sing it. They damn sure can't perform it, and even if they performed it, they're so awkward they wouldn't be able to sell it. So it's the pot calling the kettle black. You are facilitating it. You think it's cool. They think it's money. You think it's cool, and you think it's hip. So you're complicit in this. So. But they're cleaning up their act, and I love Kendrick Lamar. I mean, here's the only rapper in the history of 50 years to win the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah, told you, Kendrick's the best, man.
Yeah. Listen, gentlemen, I gotta run because I gotta do another meeting. This is a powerful conversation, especially more specifically the whole thing about marriage. Extremely important. It was one thing that I wanted to say that, man, God bless all of you, because this is a much needed conversation. I think for me personally, the bigger thing for me is this. Okay, we're talking marriage. Why are you getting married? You know what I mean? We here in America, our people in America have a very skewed perspective on the why. And especially when, we mentioned Neely Fuller and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. I love this sister. We brought her to Syracuse University years ago to speak. She said something that was interesting, because she's clinical psychologist.
That's right.
And, pardon the crassness of the analogy that she gave, that I'm going to repeat. Mm-hmm. She was like, we think we have the prerogative of, or the luxury of, disagreeing or being incohesive. Mm-hmm. We think we have the choice. So when you look at animals in the wild, even when they're having intercourse, that we get the thing doggy style from, right? Why? Because both got to look out for the enemy when procreating.
That's right. That's right.
You see what I'm saying? They recognize they don't got the luxury. They don't got those kind of luxuries. Our condition as a people, we're in the same boat, if not worse.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? That being said, and we think about the German Americans or the Irish Americans or the Japanese Americans. You see what I'm saying? They see themselves as a nation within the nation. You see, and they know that preserving their nation within the nation is paramount. You see, we see ourselves not as a nation of people. We don't see ourselves as a people. We just see ourselves as a hodgepodge group of mixed nuts. You see what I'm saying? And that's the problem. So
your mic went off.
Your mic is off, Reef.
Our forefathers, okay, we talk about kings and queens, this, that, and the third. Okay, cool, right? And forget about the fact that they maintain dynastic lines, dynastic houses. Well, how did that happen? Marriage. Mm-hmm. Were they marrying for love or for physical attraction? No, they were marrying to preserve the line.
That's it.
There was a purpose. You see what I'm saying? That was bigger than individual.
That's right.
I like you and you like me. Now we have to go back to that, because straits. We're in dire straits right now.
That's right.
We have to get back. We have to the Dr. Frazier's point, right? About when he gave the great example of 4 different ways things can happen. And we have to find the one mutual thing that we reach for that allows us to grow together.
That's right. Mm-hmm. It's a good way to say it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. We have work to do. We have work to do, because ain't nobody saving black people but black people.
Come on.
100 years and our black asses ain't saved.
Tell them.
We're waiting for us.
Right.
No man and no horse is going to come.
It is not in their best interest. It is not in their best interest to save us. Right? No. They love it just like it is. We are the consumption class. They are the merchant class.
Tell them.
We make stuff. We buy stuff.
Because we do business.
That's right. We consume. Right? Yep. And we're not paying attention. Right, and it's going to slip away, and it's going to, and we're going to look around, and before you know it, you blink your eye, you're going to look around, and you're going to go, "What happened?"
How do we, you said something that just struck a chord in me. How do we get? We've talked about this. I have this on my mental big board. How do we get someone to pay attention? How do we get them to listen? Because I know on one of our shows we talked about here is that we want to do positive 2025, right? We want to talk about a positive thing, and I want to hear your take on what's positive coming up in 2025. But how do we get someone to pay attention, to listen?
Yes. Well, it's never been a part of our conversation. This is not something we talk about. I mean, right? Because it's painful, because it ain't good, right? It's painful, And so this is really not a topic of our public conversation because we really don't want to air our dirty laundry in public. But this is what's happening. This is what's going on. Our foundation has cracks in it and is being eroded. And without fixing it over enough time, you're going to look around and it ain't going to be there, and it's going to crumble on us. So it's a very difficult conversation, right? I asked myself 2 years ago when I started looking at this, I said, why the hell is nobody talking about this?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not a genius, but I can look at numbers and what the hell is going on here? Right?
Exactly.
But it is very uncomfortable to talk about it. Now, solutions. There are many solutions to it. But we must call on, and I've had this conversation with large numbers of these people. We must call on the historically most important and respected institution in our culture, the Black church. It's 75,000.
Amen.
There should not be a Black church or mosque or whatever the hell you want to call it without a relationship ministry and a marriage ministry. They got,
but they failed us. They failed us. But they failed us. They
There's a lot
left
to say
us.
about the Black church. My bad, Dr. Dye, my bad. There's a lot to say about the Black church.
Yeah, there's a
That
lot, but
hypocrites-
I think they failed us. I think they left us. I think they didn't conjoin. They had their own bickering for whatever reason, which is odd because how can a church bicker if they preach love? But I think they failed us.
entertainment preaching, huffing and puffing on. Let me tell you about the Black church, and no disrespect to nobody that's listening or observing that's in the Black Christian church. Yeah, but I'm not bashing on you. I'm not punching down on you guys. But there's a lot of things that you guys do tolerate that's not part of the scripture that you claim to love the doctrine. You understand? A lot of taboos you don't speak about because you're part of the trauma that's part of the Black community and diaspora. A lot of things that take place that you don't want to speak about. Violation of children. You don't speak about that. But let's stop. Go ahead. My bad.
I want to state this before we close out.
Yeah, because it's a huge section of the Bible. The whole, I mean, there are at least 2,000 passages on marriage, the role of the woman, the role of the man, the role of marriage. I mean, it's not like there's nothing to talk about.
Oh man,
they don't talk about that.
It's all in there. Now, I just want to say this before we close out. I don't want to blame the Black church, right? I want to blame Black people.
Yeah, of course. Okay. I'm saying that. Yeah, you're right.
It's not just the church. It's the organizations. It's all of us. Everyone should play their role in upliftment. And if we don't do that, then hence the reason things are the way they are. So I would say it's a unified effort to bring us out of this. And whatever's going on in the Black church, it's up to us to maybe reach out to the Black church, which we're trying to do now, which this is an effort we're trying to do now with bringing people from the Black church on the platform to speak about issues and things like that.
That's right.
No, I got you, brother Ron. Now, I get what you're saying, bro. It's not bashing. I say part of the because we got to go back into slavery times. The church was a place for revolution ideas to uplift. They don't do that anymore. It's entertainment and collecting money. Pastor need a jet. I'm not saying all Black churches do that, but those that are out there that are pimping the people, pass the offering that sends the plate around 6 times.
But I think, Ron, you hit the nail on the head. We all have to take some responsibility in this.
Yeah.
We all contributed to this equally, right? So there's work that we have to do on us.
Yes, sir.
That we have to get our shit together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's nothing preventing. I mean, if you go to, I belong to a large church. If you go to a mega church, there's 5,000 people. There's nothing for 50 of those people to say we want to start a healthy relationship ministry, or we want to start a marriage. I mean, that's on them. If they requested that of the pastor, that's the pastor will do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I don't think they're I would say up to date with the new social sciences, if you will, right? So
but I bet you in the church that Dr. Frazier goes to, and in that congregation, there are people there with the brains to say, I can help with that.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
here's where the church failed us. We would not have to have gone to desegregated schools. We could have had our own schools. So I think, why should we worry about what the schools could have taught us? We could have built our own schools from the churches.
Yeah.
We didn't have to run to those other schools. That's where I think the churches dropped the ball right there. We could have built off the church schools.
That's a good point. That's a
Yeah,
good point.
and the problems that we have today are not new. It's like the snowball effect. It's been brewing.
Right. This has happened over a 50, 60-year period of time. This is not a new phenomenon.
Yeah, this is not new. Like when we were talking about,
it's like a cancer. It started as a spot and it's metastasized. Right. So
when we were talking about redlining, we didn't have to worry. The church could have bought up land and we could have set up our own neighborhoods. This church was always the center of the Black community anyway. We could have, the money we were giving to the church could have bought the land.
Yeah.
They could have owned the farms.
Right.
I mean, it could have been the center of our community. So why couldn't the church be our voice? If they were part of our spiritual, they could have been part of our leadership. We looked to them for leadership. So where did they stop protecting us? Where did it get disjointed? Because they were being burnt down because of the
government incentives.
I would say this is my guess. This is my guess.
Yes,
I think my guess is because they didn't keep up with the times, if you will, so to speak, right? They didn't have the draw, the magnetic, if you will, to keep the youth in the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, here's what's happening in the church. Quickly, I told my pastor, 10 years from now, you're going to have fewer congregants, but a larger viewership.
Yeah.
There were less people, in fact, physically coming to church.
Online.
There were more people watching it. So you will have a viewership 10 times your congregation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening, which means it gives you a new way to effectively communicate with people in ways that is easy for them to receive it and convenient for them to receive it. So then you use it. I mean, there should not be an organization or institute. I'm talking about fraternities, sororities that is not talking about and having some sort of conversation around healthy relationships and programs that are focused on relationship building and communication skills. I mean, this is universal stuff. We need these skills anyway.
Right.
Healthy relationship skills, emotional intelligence, communication skills. Every institution where we gather, fraternities, sororities, Black churches, it should be a topic of conversation.
Yes, sir.
It's fascinating you say that, because people I reach out to, they say, "Oh, we don't need your skill set to help us with ... And I just like, I find that amazing. Yeah. I really do. It's, okay. Whatever you think.
Well, they're really mistaken, and
I know, but
you call it amazing. I call it ignorance.
But I say it the nice way.
We have to bring them to it, and we have to help them understand why what you're talking about and what you do for us for the next 2 generations will be critically important. Because as I started this by saying, we are out of our freaking minds. We all need therapy.
Yes. It doesn't hurt.
On that note, we're gonna close this meeting out because I know Dr. George Frazier and everyone else on the panel has other things to do for sure. Thank you, Dr. Frazier, for showing
Thank
up.
you,
We
Doctor.
really appreciate it. We really appreciate your time. And keep up the good fight, the good work.
Absolutely. Let me make one shameless self-promotion. We got a big conference coming up.
Mhm.
This is what it looks like. It's called the Power Networking Conference. It'll be in Atlanta in November the 5th through the 8th in Atlanta at the Omni Hotel. You see what's on the cover. You see couples. So it's going to be the subject matter that we normally cover. This is our 24th annual Power Networking conference. But one of the pieces that we will be talking about will be the existential crisis of the Black family and what can we do starting right now. And we'll cover, of course, all the things that we always cover, which is the power of the human connection, which is building and properly managing wealth, and which is building and properly scaling our businesses so that we can recycle our dollars and ultimately help our people learn, earn, and return. So I want to invite anyone watching, I want to invite you to Atlanta, November the 5th through the 8th. So you got plenty of, if you like a very special deep discount offer, deep discount, because we want you to bring a young person, 17 to 25, because our young people should be sitting at the feet of our elders and masters.
Exactly.
Right? So we should require that an adult bring a young person 17 to 25, no babies, 17 to 25. I can't imagine if any of us had this kind of thing available to us when we were 17 or 18 years old. It wasn't available. It is available now. So an adult and a young person coming to the conference is $3,500. We sell out every year. In fact, it's half sold out now. So I'm going to make an offer. If you're listening, I'm going to cut it to $599 for two people, one adult, one young person. If you don't have a young person, we'll scholarship someone in your name in Atlanta. Right? $599. So that's like a 75% discount for gracing us with your time and presence in this very important, incredible conversation we had tonight. So if you want to get that, you can't go on our site and get it. That's not available on the site. There is a discount available on the site, but it ain't that. I think it's $1,500. So all you have to do is email me, G Frazier, F-R-A-S as in Sam, E-R, G Frazier at FrazierNet.com. G Frazier at FrazierNet.com. Put in the subject line, I'm in. Then in the body of the email, just put your full name and your cell number. I'll personally call you and we'll handle our business over the phone if you're interested. So you can join us in November. It's like something you've never seen before. Forbes magazine named us one of the top 5 conferences in America not to be missed. Not one of the top 5 not one of the top 5 of all conferences or Black conferences. It's one of the top 5 of all conferences put on in this country. So you can't put on a conference for Black people for 24 years and it not be exceptional, because Negroes will put your ass out of business in a New York minute.
I like that. That's a fact.
You ain't handling it. You will not be
they were like, can you slip me in?
That's dope, bro. Oh my God. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Dyer. Appreciate it, Brother Ron.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for pulling this together.
All right. Peace.
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 Thank you. It was great, man.
Yo.